Person, I have no idea who it was. So,
Yeah.
and now we're live streaming.
I don't see you though. Like I don't know if your camera is off or.
Oh shoot! I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I
All
thought I
right.
hit it already.
All right. No problem. I'm just
No idea who it
starting
was, so.
starting on YouTube. So
And now we're live streaming.
yes, but it's gonna start at 4. I just have to put it in the thing. Like 1 second. It's just because like instead of streaming it to Facebook, what I'm trying is I'm getting people to, if they want to watch it, they have to go to the landing page where all the informations about the certifications and everything are. So hopefully we make a couple sales.
Sounds good.
While you talk.
Can you send that to me so I can put it up on my link tree? You've probably done it before, and I just can't find the damn thing because I'm technologically challenged.
It's yeah, here. Where should I send it to you?
It doesn't matter if it's the B Man or the J Bryan Man, or it doesn't matter. I'll get it in my link tree.
Do you want on Facebook or?
Do what?
Do you want it on Facebook? Is that okay or
Yeah, it doesn't matter as long as I've got the link. Then I can put it in that link tree that I put on my IG bio.
It's you should have it now on Facebook.
Okay, I felt it felt the ding off. And about the spreadsheets, I have no clue what it is. And also, let me respond to the wife. My laptop died right before I left. Literally, like I was getting ready to go on the interview, and I was turning it on just to make sure I had all the files on it, and it goes to that boot up page, and it goes across, and then it just goes to black. So yeah, I mean, was it like a force velocity profile? Is that what it was?
I don't remember which one it was, but like you explained 2 or 3, like how to build it. Yes, I'll show it to you, the screen capture or something.
Okay.
No big deal.
Yeah, I can probably recreate it. It won't be too terribly hard.
Yeah, some people already finished it. Like some people just bought it and went like crazy, did the exam and everything.
Nice.
Yeah, I think we're at 40 something so far.
Okay.
So, and
we just gotta wait on Jim Ware's 500 to come through.
We sold 5 or 6 Jim flex for them.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, and they did not even start promoting yet. So.
Oh, okay. Yes, they haven't started doing that yet. Good.
No, because they want to put it on their website, and there's been some issues with that, so they did not. So
issues technologically or issues of things with us?
No, technologically, they hired a new guy and it didn't work the way they thought it would. So yeah. Okay, so let's see if that works. This Q&A here. Oh. Show. Uh-oh. Why isn't it worked fine before? Oh, okay, because I sent you your. Okay, sorry. Take this one. So I won't really talk today. I'm just gonna let you do all the talking.
Sounds good.
I want people really to have their answers, so we'll go from there.
I think I saw I couldn't actually open up the whole thing, but I saw like screenshots of the 2 or 3 questions, I think.
Yeah, there was couples on IG.
Yeah.
But people I gave access to the webinar actually to the people that bought the cert, and then everybody else has sent a link to come in here so that they can access like on the website itself.
Okay.
So there's like a 20-second delay, but should be fine.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So let's start. How do I start? Okay, let's just wait maybe a couple minutes till it's 4.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'll just go close the doors. So I ask people to give their questions on Facebook, no, on YouTube. So we'll see, like, if they do, then I'll be able to let you know also. So,
Okay. Sounds good. It just said restart required, so I'm hoping I can make it through this without my laptop just restarting on me automatically.
okay. One sec. Oh, see, somebody else just registered for the start.
Oh,
So I think it's already started. Usually I'm in a other room before. I think it's going right now. I'm just gonna check why this is not. Okay, this is working. This will work. All right, good, good. Okay, everything seems to be okay. Maybe I can stream it to Facebook also while we're here. No?
we on for about an hour, Phil.
Yeah, an hour. Oh, I want to keep it to an hour. Like, I'd rather do it more times during the year and then.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I think I can only do YouTube or Facebook, not both. It's on YouTube. Okay. So we only have one person so far, but it's not 4 yet. So. Okay. Phil, can you hear us? If so, can you please type something? No, why? What? Something's wrong.
Hey, it's Phil Hart. Works minor league baseball. He interned for Missouri. I can't remember what year that was. I was still over there.
Nice. I don't know if he wants to start it. You know what? It's 4. So let's just start with the questions we had on IG.
Okay.
So this way, like, once people start getting in more, we can take their questions. So Phil, you'll be the first one. You've been there before 4, so don't worry about that. Today, I'm going to talk as least as possible. I'm going to try to get you, Bryan, to answer most questions.
Okay.
So the first question from Max was, VBT for general population, do reliable zones are available or self-creation?
So again, it depends. So the zones really, their creation was for working in mass groups. So if you're working in a one-on-one sort of situation with somebody, then you're going to be best off with the individual low velocity profile, of course. And why would you estimate when you can directly measure? That's the way that I look at this. Now, if he's working in massive groups, the load velocity profiles, the zones, were created from the mean of the load velocity profiles of Division One athletes. Now, as it turns out, so I believe I went over this in the course and in the book as well. That hey, Division One athletes are actually a very homogenous group. So if you've got a group of ex athletes, you could start out with the zones and probably be pretty fine. Otherwise, I think that you would need to do group load velocity profiles. Now, there's been a couple of papers that have come out on this sort of thing about using the group or the individual, and I fear that some of the researchers are trying to drive more towards how should I say this? You only have lab conditions in a lab, right? So
Yeah.
they're trying to recommend the most precise thing because because they are in that laboratory setting. I don't know how well that it would actually be applicable to people. And that's another thing with the zones is that it's easy and people are going to do it because it's easy. Where that individual low velocity profile can sometimes get confusing, especially if I'm supposed to be at let's say we're in speed strength, and for me it's 1.1 meters per second, and for you it's 1.4 meters per second. So then I would be asking, hey, how come he has 1.4 and I have 1.1? And then that leads to a lot of discussions to where, especially in a group setting, everybody having the same velocity, um, it helps out here. And for me, it helps out because I don't have to answer so many questions. Yeah, because so many people forget what their velocity is supposed to be. So then their training partners is the same, then they're on the same page. So Dan, for some reason, people think that Dan and I must hate each other. Dan Baker, and honestly, it could be nothing could be further from the truth. I mean, we agree upon way more than we disagree. I think our disagreements lie in the fact that I would be dealing with groups of 30 to 60 athletes, where he would, yeah, I don't know how big his groups were, but they weren't that big. And I do VBT on Olympic lifts, and he doesn't. So there's that differentiation there, but that if you've got the ability for a small group and use individual load velocity profiles, I think that's the ideal situation. That's not my background. That's not what I experienced. That's not what I had. So I went with the zones. So again, if you've got the opportunity to use individual load velocity profiles, you're always going to be the most accurate. You know, going off of mean data has always got a huge standard deviation. So why don't we go off of the individual data that has like no standard deviation, no standard error? So look at it that way. That's my opinion. So that's a non-answer, I guess, because I just need a little bit more context. If it's individual, load velocity profile for them. If it's in groups, man, just go with the mean. And I think you'll probably find. But I should say this, if the standard deviation is more than about, I don't know, 0.06 meters per second, you might have to bucket them, a explosive group and a slow group, essentially, so that they would have two different zones. And honestly, if you got that, then it's probably indicating to you what they are deficient in. That this group that's slow, well, they probably need to improve the velocity into the spectrum. Everybody's not going to be perfectly on a linear relationship because fiber types, joint angles, levers, all of those things are going to cause variations. But I think that it's going to be pretty close, and if it isn't, then usually that's looking at a very, very heterogeneous group. I always work with homogeneous groups. You only get to the Division One. What's the percentage of athletes that make it to Division One? It's something like a percent that go from high school to college. So it's not as heterogeneous as I once thought. Whenever stepping back and looking at things from 35,000 feet allows you to have a different viewpoint. So I can really see that now. So homogeneous group mean should be fine. Really heterogeneous, you might have to bucket things.
Cool. We have another one here from Dan. Said, for budget reason, push or beast sensor, both are similar price. Thanks. So I guess it's more about what type of technology would you use if you're on a budget.
Yeah, well, so we can go through a few different avenues here. Um, the accelerometers. I haven't. There's a paper that came out from, I believe, Amador Garcia Ramos put it out a couple of years ago that was looking at the reliability and the validity. So I would look at that first for those sensors that are mentioned. Uh, then I've had great success with the Flex. Uh, and the reason why I think I've had great success with the Flex is because it isn't using just an IMU, it's using laser to give position and time. And velocity, what is it? It's position and time. That's why the GymAware was the power tool, excuse me, so accurate, because it's a tape measure and stopwatch. Yeah, you don't have to have algorithms and things like that to get basically direct measures and then estimate everything else. Uh, so the Flex comes off of that. And I just saw today in an email that they have actually now are interfacing the Flex with the team software. So I think that
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. Something that I've played around with a little bit, and by a little bit I mean it was seriously like a day, and then I found out if I lifted up something heavy, I'd probably die with that bad sinus infection I had. Was the VMAX Pro, and it was another one that seemed to be pretty good. Now it is an accelerometer, so it's going to be off a little bit. So the reliability typically varies pretty high at the velocity end of the spectrum, and it very typically with accelerometers, it's going to vary a little bit on the load, the force, the 100% into the spectrum. So like 60 to 80% accelerometers are spot on. But you start going too much lighter than that or too much heavier than that, and they tend to lose efficacy. Now, I didn't see that with the VMAX Pro, but that was an N equals one. That N equals me. So that realize that there could be whatever. With the baseball team, I didn't do a IRB. It was just an exploratory analysis. And with the Flex, it was, dude, I mean, it was like off by like 0.02. It was the most that I had seen, which was remarkable for the cost of that device. Linear position transducers, they all are around the same in their abilities, because if it's a direct measure of distance and time. Now, they need to have an x-axis correction to be good, in my opinion, because otherwise, as the first video I ever posted on my YouTube channel, which looked like you were in the Blair Witch Project, was about that, the positioning and how much you could be off just looking at the math, with using what is that, trigonometry, to look at the angle and how much your percentage you'd be off based off of different positions. So if there's no x-axis correction, you're doing one of two things. You're having to bend over and reposition the unit every time, every set, and sometimes every rep, or you're just getting bad data. And so you're getting one of those two. Then of course there are and I don't know the cost of these, but
Yeah, I checked earlier, and I don't know the Beast, but I checked Push. It's about the same price as the Flex. Maybe
yeah,
$50 less. But it's not like a huge difference.
yeah, and with the Flex, the Man 5 would give them a 5% discount if for people listening to that. And is there a bundle deal with the cert?
Yeah, we have a huge. I think you save $200 if you buy the Cert and the Flex together.
So I mean, there you
On
go.
both. So
Yeah, so that's that's a pretty good savings right there. So then you get your one-stop shop right there.
yeah,
With the Flex, though, I will say this, that whenever I did do it, I forgot to mention this, that the jerk in the military press was off. And I think that was the distance and getting some light pollution because of the way that the baseball weight room
too
was.
high.
But whenever I set it up on a box underneath it, like a jerk box or something, I'd choose the plyo boxes. Then it was spot on again.
Okay.
So I think that just had to do with the light pollution. So if you're looking at overhead movements,
Yeah.
you're going to need to do it that way. If you're doing snatch, I don't know if there's a way to safely do that. So you might that might be like, hey, this one movement you can't do.
Yeah.
But you get
I
what I'm
guess
saying.
I guess if the snatch you start from the floor and you take average, you might be not as off as if you just do a push press or or just the jerk, because you start from higher and your movement is much
That's
shorter.
an excellent point. But then I think you're still going to lose everything up above the shoulder is
Yeah.
what I'm afraid of.
Okay.
So,
We should
but
ask Travis next
yeah,
time.
actually, you're right. If we stop and think about this peak, you would be good because that's happening at the top of the set. Yeah, right. Good, man. I didn't even think about that, Phil. That's some great thinking. The peak should happen at the top of the second pole, so that would be within its range of motion anyway. So then, if we looked at the mean, it would be off, but the peak should be money. And man, I should go back and look at that because I probably was looking at mean. Because I started out with mean velocity only. Back in the day, they didn't have mean and peak; it was just mean. So I always just out of my own comfort level, I always start there with the mean velocity on everything. That's something that's funny that it's changed over time. There's some camera-based systems. Then some of the apps. I don't know the fidelity, I guess would be the appropriate term of some of the apps, but they use a reference point or a reference distance. So like the reference distance would be you stand in this box, and we know that if there's X change in this frame, then we know that you moved Y distance. So then we divide by frame rate Z, and that gives us velocity for that distance in time. So they've got to either have a spot, or you've got to tell them what the range of motion is, and they can divide out. Now, the downside to that is, at least whenever I messed around with it, that you had to go in and find the start and the stop of each repetition. And at least in the team settings that I was dealing with, that wasn't very, you couldn't do it. That's just ridiculous. It was going to take way too long. So we talked about camera, LPT. We talked about accelerometer.
I think the
laser.
The Perch is using a camera too, no?
Yeah, Perch uses camera. Elite Form uses camera. There's some cell phone camera ones that's the ones that I didn't know about.
Yes,
Since he was talking about cost, it's like, man, I'm pretty sure Elite Form is more expensive than GymAware. Perch, I have no idea how much their cost is. And yeah.
I mean, I'm biased because I've been using GymAware for a long time, and obviously we're promoting with them with the cert and all that. But like I've been trying a couple, and I have the old Tendo at the gym. Like we tried accelerometers. I mean, nothing right now for me beats GymAware. So
no, yeah, that's hands down. Like I've said it 100 times, man. The power tool, there's a Rolls Royce of VBT with the price tag to match. Yeah. So it's for me, it's a buy nice or buy twice. The Flex has been a great option too, especially for a individual user. I think it might actually be a better purchase, just because it's $2,200. Like if it's just me, I can't rationalize that.
Yeah.
But I could definitely do it for a team.
And it's actually much easier to bring the Flex in a gym setting if you're alone, like bring it to your local gym or something. Right. Then set up like the power tool with your iPad and everything. Dealing with a big team, like when I just came back from Poland, I did all my testing with the GymAware. But like for day to day, the Flex is more than enough even for the athletes.
Yeah, no, it is. It's I'm right there with you. So if it's me, here's me. I went over everything just to be completely general and agnostic. Here's my view. If I don't have the money for the power tool, I'm getting the Flex. It's just that simple.
Sorry, I have a little camera issue. Should be back. Okay, sorry. So it's the same for me. But like people think that the Flex is more expensive than it actually is. I think if I have the choice between accelerometer or the Flex, personally, I would choose the Flex because if you want to do like everything you talk about in the cert with the zones and the velocity losses and everything, or hit like a very specific thing. If your margin of error is too high, right, then what are you really doing? Like at 0.02 or 0.01, you're not too bad.
Yeah, I'm cool, man. That's great. It's kind of like Vicon versus the Kinect, the Xbox Kinect. They were actually at Missouri and also at Miami. They've both done studies looking at the marker motion capture versus the Kinect, and it's like, okay, are you going to pay $250,000 for this system, or are you going to get 85 or 90% of the benefit for $200? And
Yeah, exactly.
to me, that I'll take the $200 hands down every time.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, especially now if they're pairing it with the cloud, and it's a huge thing. I mean,
Oh
I
yeah.
haven't tried it yet, but that's cool. All right, next one from Mathieu. How long can you stay in the same zone for development for general population using VBT?
The way that I look at it is about what I typically see with training is that if you're going for strength adaptation, so you're looking at velocity loss for maximum effort, so you're just looking at like a 10 or 20% drop off, you can probably go about 8 weeks, 10 weeks with the progressive overload using the velocity to dictate the load of the barbell and some velocity loss. If he's talking about for power, usually that's about 6 weeks, and then your results taper off when you're training at that velocity into the spectrum. And it's kind of interesting that there is a paper from, I don't remember who was the lead author. I want to say, I'm not even going to think, but it's Pierre Samazino and JB Marin and that group. And they looked at, shoot, I could probably open my Facebook and find it in a message, but they split the guys off, the two groups off, and trained based off of what their deficit was. In the velocity deficit group, their adaptation period was like 6 weeks and shorter, maybe 8 weeks and shorter, versus the load deficiency, because then you've got to actually build up the myofibril. You got to build up the architecture for that. That was like 12 weeks, I think, was the average for that, and that was just what I had hand calculated by looking at the graphs. Is on my other computer, which is now dead, which really sucks because that means I have to do that again if I want to look at that.
All right. But like to me, and the next question is a bit about that too. Thoughts on undulating training zones through a week versus training one for a period of time?
Yeah, so that comes back to, what is your style of training? What is your goal? So if you're doing wet, I have achieved amazing results using the concurrent style periodization, like West Side Barbell, as a power lifter turned strength coach, that of course is some origins that I went with. I saw fantastic results. You do load on one day, velocity on the other, and hey, we're doing great. Then I just lost that thing popped up here, and I was like, oh, hey, what's that? That's good. What was the question again? I was forgetting.
If you can undulate periodization.
Oh, yeah. So then, long story short, you can go Bondarchuk style and keep everything the same. You can absolutely do that. And then actually, Derek Evely shared some data with me that I've got to just. Case studies are hard to write up and report, but it was amazing how the velocity tracked with the throw. It was like whenever the velocity increased, a day or two later, the throw increased, and it was like the same amount. I mean, the graph was just perfectly parallel. It was absolutely amazing. But that's just showing, going back to that study, there was, I think it was a 97 study by Miller. It's in French. I had to have a swimmer translate it for me. I wish I still knew where that study was, Phil. I'd send it to you, and because they could just tell me the gist of it. They couldn't tell me everything. But they were, they were saying that that the velocity, it was, as a result of the autonomic nervous system. So then, that makes perfect sense. But you can absolutely, and there was I wrote a article several years ago now. I don't know how long ago it is, but it's on Simply Faster. It's on there about how to do undulating and waving through the phases and some different things that I've done there. So yeah, you can absolutely use it for concurrent and undulating because it's just load selection. To me, some people are up in arms and they've called me. Like, about 4 people have called me. They're like, "Can you believe what they said on Rob Pacey's podcast?" and blah blah blah. I'm like, dude, I don't care. You can have multiple opinions. Whenever if I went to a different school instead of University of Missouri, the way that VBT is seen today from me would probably look different. I did things a certain way because of my constraints. But whenever you get down to it, VBT is really it's load selection, man. It's not just its own thing. It's they were training velocity into the spectrum before, load into the spectrum before. It's just, man, I just put it together. Strength, speed, speed, strength, accelerative strength. We went through all of those, where I just pretty much stay in that strength, speed, speed, strength for the most part now. But I looked at it a little bit differently before. So you can absolutely do it. Anything that you can do normally, you can add velocity onto and just get a little bit better results, either through looking at velocity loss or just using the intent to drive the movement. So then you get more explosive and faster and jumping higher, like was found in that Randall study that Nick Gill, the New Zealand All Blacks, their feeder teams.
Yeah, like that's what I answered on Instagram too, is to me is just you're using this instead of a set percentage of what you think is their 1RM. So it auto regulates where your athlete is for that day, and you're just sure to hit the right spot. So you can use whatever type of periodization you want, really, whatever you're comfortable with. But use this instead of percentages. Like when you talk about Westside earlier, how they go from 60, 65, every week. But like that's numbers based on the 1RM. So how I see it is we use the number of the speed instead of a percentage of your 1RM.
And also we got to think about it that is SPP versus GPP.
Right?
Westside's powerlifting. They're just doing their competitive lifts with that. Versus for I'm with the few times that I have been to the Iceville, I've never seen a barbell on it. So that just goes to show you what it is.
Probably somebody tried, but
yeah, if anybody, it was Giles Cometti, right, with Werner Gunther, with all the crazy stuff they were doing.
Yeah. All right. So, question from Max. Max, I don't know if you want to ask it live. I don't know if you're there or not, but I'm going to ask it. And if you want to follow up, just let me know. I'll let you in. Could VBT be used for programming for hypertrophy?
Oh, absolutely. So, we just in the cert, we talk a lot about the, oh gosh, I'm having a brain fart on names. Fernando Pereira Blanco study in the Scandinavian Journal of Sport and Medicine or something like that, where they looked at the differences from types of hypertrophy from velocity loss. So you can, I think velocity is actually amazing for hypertrophy because you can go with that selective hypertrophy. Do we want just indiscriminate hypertrophy? This dude is, I was talking the other day and I used an example of a guy that was an offensive lineman. He came in at about, he was probably about 6'8". So that's about 2 meters tall. And he came in at 250 pounds. So that would be about 12, 13 kilograms as playing offensive lineman. And those guys are usually, at that time, our offensive line averaged about 330. So about 150 kilos. That dude was getting tossed like a rag doll. So he just needed some more inertia. So by giving additional, even lower end on the intensity with higher volume, he blew up. And that indiscriminate hypertrophy turned him into a player because he always moved well. He was just too light. He didn't possess enough momentum. He didn't possess enough inertia. Conversely, you could have somebody that is already almost about the size that they need to be, but they're in a speed power sport. So then you would want like a shot putter. We don't want type 1 fibers, increasing in hypertrophy on a shot putter. We want it all type 2A. And you know what? If they were blessed by the hand of God, we could go into this, but I've got a theory that the way that we view 2X right now is wrong. Because for a long time we thought that the 2B fibers, right, were the explosive fibers, and they weren't. They were 2X. I think that we've got two different 2X variants because 2X shows up in two different populations. The the blessed by the hand of God athletes, like the world champions, whenever you look at Andy Galpin had a study with the world champion, the weightlifters in the world championship, and there's been some case studies like on that 60-meter high hurdle world champion. I could go back and find that, but those are the only athletes that you see 2x with in a high percentage. Most of them, it's 2A or type 1. And then whenever you see 2x in the sedentary population, as soon as they start to have any activity, it converts to 2A in type 1. It just goes away completely. So I think that there's got to be two different 2x's, because why would it stay in the elite athletes, but it wouldn't stay in the general population? That just doesn't make sense to me. But for those individuals that are trying to push that 2A or 2x, going with repeated more sets with a lower velocity loss, like a 5% or a 10%, is going to stimulate the adaptation specifically in those fast twitch fibers, be it 2A or be it 2X. That so you could absolutely use, and I recommend it for hypertrophy, but I only recommend it with velocity loss for those conditions. Now, conversely, I'm not doing that with all athletes. And I think that needs to come about, because there's a time and place for everything. If I've got a young athlete, sometimes they just need to learn how to toughen up. There's always that. Going back to Dan, he's got that. There's that picture that always floats around every year during rugby season of him with the flat top and the shirt that says "Harden the up." So there's a time and place for that, where you just need to learn how to grind, and you need to learn how to go to fatigue, and you need to produce lactate, and you need to do all these other things to have experienced them to set the platform to do later. And in which case, I don't do anything velocity with those individuals. And for some reason, that tends to surprise people. But I'm surprised that they're trying to use advanced methods with beginner athletes. So there's surprise on both ends of the spectrum as far as that goes.
Yeah. Yeah, and where would you start? Like, what speed would you start for general hypertrophy?
Oh gosh, you know what? I wouldn't look at a general speed. I would look at the velocity loss, right?
Yeah.
And it just goes back to what you need. If I need, you can just take the regular percentages that you work with, right? Let's say that most people are trained in hypertrophy in that 60 to 75%. That's fine. Just go ahead and instead of giving 4 sets to 12, give them 4 sets to 40%. And then or 60%, I'm sorry, 20%, or whatever it happens to be, and use that instead. Now, what's going to tend to happen whenever you use velocity loss, especially for hypertrophy, what's pretty cool is that, well, I don't know if it's pretty cool. It could be. I think this is super cool, because then it allows us to dial in a little bit more. And with that dialing in, you look at that paper that came out with Jonathan Weekly, myself was on there, Amador, all the VBT guys, right? That basically the lactate and ammonia levels stayed pretty constant whenever you went with velocity loss. But if you gave prescribed sets and reps, well, power outputs dropped off as from a vertical jump, lactate levels increased, ammonia increased. So, and then you remember that if we, I believe that they looked at the strength gains were actually better with the lower velocity loss than training to failure. And then if you look back at the study from Fernando, exact same thing. They got stronger, they got faster, and they jumped higher from doing less volume. So I think that we might have gone a little too far on that volume end, and think, what can somebody withstand? What can they tolerate? Well, there's something I can't remember. I think I might have gotten it from Jay DeMayo or Doc Yes's, was stimulate, don't annihilate. And that is, that velocity loss really allows you to key into that. It's like, how much do they need? It's going to vary on the day. I don't think you can say, well, you should do 4x8 or 6x12, or God forbid 10x10 German volume training. But that's a whole different topic there. I got a video on that on my YouTube channel too. So I could go on and on about that, but hopefully that we got to it, or I got completely derailed and left that answer in the dust somewhere.
That's fine. Here, Max has a follow-up question. Maybe you can read it. It's easier.
Let me see if I can pop that. Crap, I lost it.
Would you take the same approach to general public? I thought about using using it as a tool to give feedback and possible auto-regulation if clients are in the gym without someone with them during all sets.
I think that would be, with that velocity loss approach, I think that would absolutely be applicable to the general population. Of all of the things that I've done with velocity, I think that, velocity loss is the one that would be most applicable to everybody. And then on top of that, just freaking jump and giving them feedback of, loaded jumps for that. Because then you're going towards that velocity of the spectrum. That's the area where most people end up being deficient. They understand how to push load and progress in that, but they don't understand how to progress in the velocity of the spectrum. But no, yeah, dude, Max, that's absolutely, I think that would be fantastic for the gym pop.
Yeah. The only thing is they need to be pretty good with their lifts, otherwise they're gonna get
weird. Form needs to their form needs to be there. So actually, then that actually runs me back, rereading the question. If they are well trained, their technique is dialed in, and they don't need you to correct their technique every rep, then it would be a great tool. But if they're not doing the technique right anyways, they're going to end up altering their form, and that's going to turn to crap because you thought that the VBT device served as another coat. Not saying you, Max, but this is just something that on Twitter, maybe it was last week, Will Fleming got me fired up on this. That so many people are like, oh, well, VBT, the athletes just cheat their form and all this other crap. It's like, no, dude, you thought that was just doing your job for you. No, that's just making sure that you alter the load appropriately. That is not making sure that they do the movement right. You've got to be the coach that stands up and says no. So I wouldn't give it to a person within Gym Pop that, especially if they're using a free barbell, unless they are dialed in, and they're dialed in every rep, and they're not going to be the person that starts trying to cheat the system and jumping and changing the movement to get a higher score. So that's a dichotomous answer. That no answer. You got to know your person. If it's machines, dude, give them a lot. Do it because they can't screw it up. At least that's what I've been seeing with the older people with the Kaiser equipment. That just let it rip and go super fast and go, and put on the Smith to counter that. I would be careful with the Smith, especially with squats, because man, that lumbar spine will fold up real quick. I hate squats for Smith machine. But something I'm dealing with right now that's super cool. It just came into the lab. Is a XPT trainer. So that's a rack that when it's pretty ingenious. Because it's super simple, but it uses some lever systems with brakes and metal to be able to just basically let go of the handles, and some stops come out, and it goes into the rack, and it doesn't come back down on you. But it allows for the tilting, the movement of the barbell to be completely normal. So then you get the safety of the Smith machine by being able to set up the stops and things like that. With the mobility of the free movement. So I'm looking at here at Miami, doing some with the aging population and with the athletic population, doing things like bench throws. I've never measured before, even though we could with the gym aware, because I don't trust anybody. That's the last thing that I want to have is somebody missing half of their teeth because their partners didn't catch the bar. Well, now with something like the XPT, we could actually look at that. So.
Cool. Another question here from YouTube. With the certification, would you recommend using VBT with youth athletes?
With the youth athletes, I'm not youth. Here's what I think, and this is an unpopular question probably for VBT, unpopular opinion, I should say, that with youth, you need to make sure that they are mobile. You need to make sure that they're in condition. I wouldn't worry about the velocity of the barbell for them. I would probably, in all candor, if it's youth, I would probably take an approach like the 1x20. Even though I don't really think that that's the appropriate term for it. I know why he picked it, but It's really just a GPP intensification block that the youth are going to get far more out of being able to move well in just a real small, basic, slow cooked progressive overload than they will with and sprinting and jumping. Because good Lord, with the youth in those speed windows, that if you look at what was that Esteban Balier's work with those speed windows, that man, that's what they need to do. They need to sprint, they need to jump, and then you can just slow cook some progressive overload, and you will see amazing results. Matter of fact, there was a paper that came out of the Soviet Union back in the 70s or 80s, and I've quoted a couple of places. I got to remember what the presentation is so I could go back and pull it up quickly. That was the breakdown of how things should be done for a youth athlete. And it was 75% of their training should be speed strength type activities, so sprinting, jumping, etc. And only like 25% be, your traditional weight room activities over the course of the week for the youth athlete. The 14 and below, I believe, was the population, but it's been a decade since I've read that, so I'm a little rusty. The cobwebs are up there in the brain between the travel and everything else. I'm blanking on the author and the name of the paper, but it's in one of my presentations somewhere.
Okay. Next one from Frank. Must read papers or books on VBT basics coming from an absolute beginner.
Well, I mean, of course, that the book that I've written in the course. I mean, that's I can definitely recommend some other papers. I love that Fernando Blanco one that I've talked about. There was movement velocity as a measure of loading intensity by Bozadas Badillo y Sanchez Medina. Then that's a classic paper. Dan's got some good ones that are out there, but they're a little bit harder to get because they're Journal of Australian Strength and Conditioning, so they're not actually indexed. So you're not going to find them on PubMed. You're not going to find them on Google Scholar. You would actually have to be a member of the ASCA and look on their site. The paper that I was on with Jonathan in the Strength and Conditioning Journal, I'm blanking on the name right now. It just came out within the past year or two. It's like research-based applications of velocity-based training or something like that, where we go over. Jonathan did a great job of explaining all of those. There's a lot of articles from, Mark Watts put a good one out many years ago. It's probably been a decade ago. I had some on Elite FTS that were pretty explanatory. But man, if you're a beginner, honestly, the course, that's who it's for. It is soup to nuts that you get the start at the cell, and let's build out from there. And I think that's going to be one of the key ones. Dan's got a course as well. There's books from, I think he's got a book. I've got obviously mine. I have not seen the one from Human Kinetics with, I keep seeing the ads. I think it's Nunzio something. I can't remember his last name. But I know what my stuff is, and I could definitely recommend that.
I think with the cert in your book, they're pretty set.
Yeah. Then after that, it's all just exactly what you want to know, and then that gets more into the advanced stuff.
Mm-hmm. Do you track velocity, from Frank again? Do you track velocity on most exercise variations like sumo, box, close grip, or other things?
It depends. So here's how I do velocity for the most part now. With the squats and the deads, if I'm trying to develop power with them, I'll put velocity on there. And that would be on, like, if I'm going with essentially a 5-level approach, that would be level 4 and level 5. The first level is get in shape, get in condition. Second level is learn the technique. Third level is get strong. Fourth level is start adding in the velocity component. And the fifth is where we start looking at more of the special strength. So it's not until that level 4 that I'm really going to be doing a lot of that. And it's going to be squat, bench, deadlift, Olympic lift variance with peak velocity. And that's going to be really it. Now, if I've got somebody like if Christian Cantwell were not so old, right? If he were still competing in the shot, and he and I were still both living in Columbia, Missouri, we would most likely be doing velocity loss on the other movements, like close grip bench press and things like that. But I think that is the return on investment is low outside of the power or fundamental exercises. If it is not the core exercise, don't worry about it. Right? You're majoring in minor at that point. In the book, I go over like one of my workouts for throwers, and I think over the course of the week there were 3 exercises that we did velocity on, but there was like 6 or 7 that we could have potentially done it, and we didn't do it on the others because their technique wasn't good enough yet. So the VBT guy doesn't even do VBT on everything. It's got its place, but it's not everywhere.
Yeah.
I made the mistake though earlier on in my career that I tried doing that, and man, it just slowed everything down, and some stuff went to shit. Some things they shouldn't do velocity on,
Yeah.
like a stability exercise.
All right. Yeah. Like if you understand everything that is in the cert and in your book, then I guess you can just pick the exercise that relates to your sport and which one you
Absolutely.
need to do. Like once you understand it well, it's easy to play around with it and try for your reality.
Right.
Like I'm doing it for skating probably differently than you would for shot putters or for football players.
Oh, absolutely.
But I use it from what I understand that I think works best for skating, So
yeah, the one thing that I want to point out about this is I did not go up on top of whatever that mountain was with Moses to get the 10 Commandments, brought down by the hand of God. I'm a person who looked at it, applied some principles, figured some stuff out for the way that it worked for me as a coach, and then tried to educate everybody else on what I did. I am, for some reason, it seems like sometimes people, whenever you get in front of, man, so I'm giving the keynote at the NSCA, and I was thinking back about like the people that I've seen give keynote lectures before in this type of area. And I thought, dude, either they messed up or all these other people are human. Like these Bill Kramers and Mike Stones and Bill Allerheigens and Andy Fries. I think of them as these infallible people who know everything. You could go up and their brain was just touched by God. My brain was touched by Jack Daniels. So things are not as they say. I'm not infallible. Everything was based off of my needs and my approach. Your needs and your approach are very, very different. What makes a good speed skater probably is not going to make a good offensive lineman. And you have to take the concepts and apply them to you. Yeah, it goes kind of back to like the railroad companies. The railroad companies just knew that their job, if you read Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why, that their job was to put down railroad tracks and put railroad cars on those railroad tracks. Well, and then most of them have gone out of business. But if they would have looked at it as my job is to move cargo and people from point A to point B, they probably would have adapted with the highway infrastructure and air infrastructure, and then FedEx and UPS wouldn't be what they are today. It would be B&O Railroad or something like that. So you have to just take concepts and figure out what your why is. My why is I want my athletes to be able to perform at the highest possible level. It isn't about the zones. It's okay. They need velocity into the spectrum. They need low force into the spectrum. They need this. They need that. Okay, let's tweak it with some velocity laws. So you learn the principles and apply those principles to your activities. Because realizing that if you think that I was standing on that mountain and got something handed down to me, I didn't. This is all my concussions and booze-riddled brain that had figured this out. So, you're just looking at things from my perspective.
Yeah. And I think that's what's super cool about how deep you would dive in the cert with it. So once you understand all the concepts, then you're fine. You can try whatever you need. So So yeah, that's it for today, Brian. That was really great. Let's do it again soon.
Yeah.
The more people are going to be in the cert, the more of these we can do. Everything will be added to the certification as well, so people will be able to, even those that didn't see it today, will be able to
Fantastic.
access it. So yeah, thank you so much,
Thank
and
you.
let's do this again soon.
Sounds good.